The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species. Its walls stretched upward for nearly a mile, covered in glowing symbols that represented every member world. Floating platforms held delegates from 100 different races, each one believing themselves important. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and alien perfumes that mixed together in an unpleasant way. Park Gina stood at the human platform, her hands folded neatly in front of her black diplomatic uniform. She had served as humanity's ambassador for 22 years. Her hair had turned gray in this chamber. Her eyes had grown tired from reading rejection letters. But she had never stopped trying, never stopped believing that one day the Council would see humans as equals. Today, they were voting on the Orion Passage trade routes. These routes connected the richest mining systems in the galaxy. Control of them meant wealth and power. Humanity had been using these routes for 30 years, paying fees that other species did not have to pay. Gina had simply asked for equal treatment. Nothing more. The Valkyrie delegate, a tall creature with silver scales and 4 arms, rose to speak. His name was High Chancellor Morith, and he ruled this chamber with an iron grip. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "The human request is denied," he said. "Young species do not understand the complexity of galactic trade. Perhaps in another century, they will be ready for such responsibility." Laughter filled the chamber. Dozens of alien delegates found this very funny. Some did not even try to hide their amusement. One delegate made a gesture that Gina had learned was deeply insulting. Admiral Kim Taiho, Quay, sat behind Gina, clenched his fist so hard his knuckles turned white. He was a military man who had spent his life protecting Council borders from raiders and pirates. His ships had saved countless alien lives, and now they were laughing at him. Trade Minister Lee Soyoung closed her eyes and took a slow breath. She had negotiated hundreds of deals that benefited Council worlds. She had given favorable terms to species in need, asking nothing in return. And now they treated her like a child. Science Liaison Cho Yoonji stared at her tablet, pretending to read something. She was the youngest member of the human delegation, only 34 years old. She had believed in the Council. She had believed that knowledge and cooperation could bring species together. Today, that belief died inside her. Jaina listened to the laughter for exactly 12 seconds. She counted each one. Then she picked up her documents from the platform. She organized them neatly into her case. She closed the case with a soft click. The laughter began to fade as delegates noticed her movements. Gina stood straight and gave a single bow to the chamber. It was a human gesture of respect, one she had offered at the end of every session for 22 years. But this time, it meant something different. This time, it was goodbye. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the growing silence. Admiral Taiho rose and followed her. He did not look back. Minister Lee gathered her materials and walked out. Liaison Cho was the last to leave. At the door, she paused for just a moment. Some delegates thought she might say something, but she simply stepped through and was gone. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Then Chancellor Moroth waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Let them sulk," he said. "They will return when they calm down." "Young species are always emotional," the other delegates agreed. Humans were being dramatic. They would send an apology within a week and return to their duties. That was what young species did. That was what everyone expected. 3 days passed. Human communication channels went silent. Every message sent to human ships received no response. Every call to human stations met only static. On the 4th day, scouts reported that human outposts were being evacuated. Not attacked. Not destroyed. Simply emptied. Humans were packing their belongings and leaving without any explanation by the end of the week. There was not a single human vessel in Council space. Their stations were dark and cold. Their trade offices were locked and empty. The coordinates to their home systems had been erased from every navigation computer they had ever touched. Chancellor Morath called an emergency session. "Find them," he ordered. "Send diplomatic ships. Offer them whatever they want to return. But there was a problem no one wanted to admit. No one knew where Earth was. No one had ever been there. In 40 years of human membership, not a single council ship had ever visited a human world. Humans had always come to them. Humans had always done the traveling, the visiting, the adapting. The council had star charts that showed human territory as a gray blob labeled Terran-administered sectors. There were no coordinates, no system names, no maps. Because no one had ever thought to ask, days turned into weeks. Search parties found nothing. Diplomatic messages echoed into empty space. The humans had not threatened war. They had not demanded anything. They had simply walked away without a word. In her private quarters on the council station, Chancellor Moreth's assistant found something disturbing in the archives. It was a record of every formal invitation humanity had ever sent to council members. Invitations to Earth. Invitations to human celebrations. Invitations to cultural exchanges. There were 2,847 invitations over 40 years. Not a single one had been accepted. Moreth read this report in silence. Then he read it again. A strange feeling crept into his chest. He did not recognize it at first because he had never felt it before. It was the beginning of fear, because somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity was gone. And for the first time in galactic history, the Council realized that they had never actually known the species that served them so faithfully. They had never bothered to learn, and now it was too late to ask. 3 months after the humans left, the first cracks began to appear. It started small. A medical station on the planet, Vishay Prime, ran out of a special medicine used to treat radiation burns. The doctors searched their records and discovered that the medicine had been created by Dr. Yoon Hana, a human researcher who had worked at the station for 15 years. She had developed the formula herself. She had trained local doctors to use it, and she had been improving it every year. Now she was gone, and no one knew how to make more. The head doctor, a Veshan with pale blue skin and 6 eyes, sent urgent requests to the Council. He needed help. His patients were dying. But when experts arrived to study Dr. Yoon's research, they found that her work was far more complex than anyone had realized. She had not simply created one medicine. She had built an entire system of treatments that connected to each other in ways no one else understood. It would take years to replace her work. The patients could not wait years. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made. The Valkyrie trade fleet, the pride of Chancellor Moreth's species, found itself in serious trouble. Their ships were stuck at 17 different spaceports because their navigation computers had stopped working properly. Engineers investigated and found the problem. For decades, a human navigator named Baek Juan had been quietly updating their hyperspace calculations. He had found ways to travel between stars that saved enormous amounts of fuel and time. His routes were better than anything the Valkyrie had created themselves. But he had never made a big announcement about it. He had simply done the work and shared the results. Now he was gone, and his calculations had gone with him. The Valkyrie tried to use their old routes, but those routes were slower and more dangerous. Ships that once made trips in 3 days now took 3 weeks. The cost of fuel increased by 400%. Trade deals fell apart because goods arrived too late. Chancellor Moreth received angry messages from Valkyrie merchants every day. They wanted answers. He had none to give. On 12 colony worlds far from the core systems, food production began to fail. These worlds had been barren rocks just 20 years ago. Now they grew enough food to feed billions. Everyone knew they were agricultural miracles. But few people remembered how they had become miracles. The answer was Shin Mireille and her husband Shin Dongwu. They were simple farmers from Earth who had volunteered to help struggling colonies. They had no fancy titles or important positions. They just knew how to make things grow. Mireille had a gift for understanding soil. She could look at dead ground and see what it needed to come alive. Dongwu understood water systems better than any computer. Together, they had transformed 12 dead moons into green paradises. They had offered to teach others. They had begged the Council to let them train local farmers. But the Council had refused. Security concerns, they said. We cannot allow humans too much influence over food production. Gosh. So the couple had done the work themselves year after year, never complaining, never asking for thanks. And now they were gone. The crops began to die within weeks. The soil, without their careful attention, started to turn sour. Local farmers tried everything they knew, but nothing worked. They had never learned the humans' methods because no one had allowed them to. Food prices across the sector increased by 300%. The border regions suffered worst of all. Commander Han Seojin had been the only officer willing to negotiate with the Crocian raiders. The Crocian were a violent species that lived outside council space. They attacked trade ships and took whatever they wanted. Every attempt to stop them with force had failed, but Han Seojin had found another way. He had studied their culture. He had learned their language. He had discovered that they raided because their own worlds were dying and they were desperate. So he had made deals with them. He had arranged for food and medicine to reach their people in exchange for peace. For 10 years, there had been almost no Crocian attacks. Most council members had forgotten the raiders even existed. They assumed the problem had simply solved itself. Now, Han Seojin was gone, and no one else knew how to talk to the Crocian. Within 2 months, attacks increased by 500%. Trade ships were destroyed. Colonies were raided. Thousands died. The council held emergency meetings every week. They issued formal requests for humanity to return. They promised better treatment. They offered voting rights and equal status. Their messages traveled into deep space and found nothing, because humanity was simply somewhere else, doing what they had always done. Helping those who appreciated them, building with those who respected them. The difference was that those people were not council members. Reports came from the outer regions. Travelers spoke of human ships offering free medical care to plague-stricken worlds. They spoke of human engineers repairing broken stations without asking for payment. They spoke of human soldiers protecting convoys from pirates and refusing any reward. The humans had not stopped being kind. They had simply stopped being kind to those who had treated them with contempt. And as the months passed and the problems grew worse, the council began to understand something terrible. They had not lost a junior member species. They had lost the people who had been holding everything together, and they had never even noticed. Scout Commander Velik was the best tracker in the Galactic Council. He had hunted criminals across 1,000 star systems. He had found hidden bases that no one else could locate. His record was perfect. He had never failed a mission until now. For 8 months, he had been searching for Earth and the human colonies. Chancellor Morath had given him unlimited resources. 50 ships, the best sensors, access to every database in council space. Velik had promised to find the humans within a month. 8 months later, he stood before the council with nothing. "I do not understand," he said, his voice heavy with shame. "We searched every sector. We followed every possible trail. We found nothing. It is as if the humans never existed." Chancellor Morath slammed his fist on his platform. "Impossible. A species of 12 billion people does not simply disappear. They have dozens of colony worlds. Where are they?" Velik lowered his head. "That is the problem, High Chancellor. We do not know where their colony worlds are. We never recorded the locations." The chamber fell silent. Delegates looked at each other with confusion. "Explain," Morath demanded. Vel pulled up a star chart. It showed council space in great detail. Every member world was marked with a glowing dot. Trade routes connected them like threads of light. It was beautiful and complete. Except for one area. In the corner of the map there was a large gray blob. It had no stars marked inside it. No routes connected to it? The only label said, Terran-administered sectors. "This is all we have," Velik said. "In 40 years, no council ship ever entered human space. We have no coordinates for Earth. We have no coordinates for any human world." A delegate from the Athesian Consortium spoke up. "But humans came here. They used our ports. Surely we have records of where they came from?" Velik shook his head. "Human ships always arrive from neutral jump points. common routes that anyone could use. Their departure vectors were never recorded because no one thought it was important. What about communication signals? Another delegate asked. We sent them thousands of messages over the years. All messages were relayed through council communication stations, Velik explained. Humans never gave us direct access to their networks. And we never asked for it. Chancellor Marath stared at the gray blob on the map. His scales had turned a pale color that showed his distress. Are you telling me, he said slowly, that in 40 years of membership, we never once sent a ship to Earth? We never once visited their worlds. We never once asked where they lived. Velik nodded. That is correct, High Chancellor. The silence in the chamber was heavy. Every delegate was thinking the same thing. Humans had attended every council celebration. They had sent gifts for alien holidays they did not understand. They had learned alien languages and customs. They had visited every member world, sometimes multiple times, and no one had ever returned the gesture. Not once. Velik continued his report. There is more, High Chancellor. I spoke with travelers from outside council space. They told me stories. What kind of stories? Stories about humans helping worlds that the council had abandoned? Species too poor or too weak to interest us. The humans went to them instead. Velik activated a different display. It showed a sector of space far from council borders. Red warning symbols marked it as dangerous and unstable. This region was threatened by a dying star, Velik said. The star was about to explode. 12 inhabited worlds faced destruction. They begged the council for help 5 years ago. Chancellor Morath shifted uncomfortably. I remember. We decided the cost of evacuation was too high. The species were not members. It was not our responsibility. The humans evacuated all 12 worlds, Velik said quietly. Captain Kang Yuri led a fleet of 30 ships. They made 200 trips over 18 months. They saved 4 billion lives. The chamber was completely silent now. The survivors asked why humans were helping them. Velik continued. Captain Kang reportedly answered, because someone should. A Theshan delegate spoke up. Did she ask for anything in return? Payment. Resources. Political alliance. Velik shook his head. Nothing. The humans asked for nothing. They simply helped and then left. That makes no sense, the Velkari delegate beside Morath said. No species does anything for nothing. There must be something they want. But even as he spoke, the words sounded hollow. Because deep down, every delegate in that chamber knew the truth. They had seen it for 40 years and ignored it. Humans helped others because helping was what they did. It was not a strategy. It was not a trick. It was simply who they were, and the council had repaid that kindness with mockery, contempt. Chancellor Morath dismissed the session early. He could not bear to sit in that chamber any longer. In his private quarters, he poured himself a drink and stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was building something new. They were creating relationships with species who appreciated them. They were making friends who would remember their kindness. And the council was left with a gray blob on a map, and the growing realization that they had made a terrible mistake. Morath finished his drink and poured another. He had a feeling he would need many more before this was over. 2 years after the humans left, the Galactic Council was falling apart. The Crocian Dominion had conquered 14 star systems. Without Commander Han Seogen to negotiate peace, the raiders had grown bold. They attacked not just trade ships, but entire colonies now. Their fleets grew stronger with each victory, while council forces grew weaker. The Theshan economy had collapsed by 30%. Their medical industry, once the pride of the galaxy, could not replace the treatments that Dr. Yoon Hanna had created. Hospitals closed. Doctors retired in shame. Patients died from diseases that had been curable just 2 years ago. 3 member species had officially withdrawn from the council. Their statements were polite but clear. They no longer believed the council could protect them or lead them. They were looking for other alliances. Some whispered about joining whatever the humans were building in the outer regions. Chancellor Morath sat alone in his office, reading a report that made his blood turn cold. He had ordered a complete historical review of humanity's membership in the Council. Every record, every document, every contribution. He wanted to understand what had gone wrong. Now he wished he had never asked. The report was 3,000 pages long. It detailed 40 years of human service to the Council. And it was devastating. Humans had joined as junior members, which meant they had almost no rights. They could not vote on major decisions. They were excluded from security briefings. They paid higher fees than other species. They were assigned the worst quarters and the most difficult tasks. They had accepted all of this without complaint. In the beginning, other species had thought humans were weak. A species that did not fight for better treatment must not deserve it. So the mockery began. Small insults at first, then larger ones. Delegates would interrupt human speakers. They would steal human ideas and present them as their own. They would make jokes about human appearance, human customs, human intelligence. The humans never fought back. They simply continued their work, and what work it was. The report listed thousands of human contributions. Ogion, a quiet researcher with thick glasses and a shy smile, had spent 15 years developing the universal translation algorithms that every species now used. Her work allowed delegates to speak freely, without language barriers. It was the foundation of all council communication. No one had ever thanked her. When she received a small award for scientific achievement, the ceremony was held in an empty room. The certificate spelled her name wrong. Moon Junsu was an engineer who worked on a remote space station. When the station's reactor began to fail, he crawled into the maintenance tunnels to fix it manually. The radiation killed him within hours, but he stayed until the job was done. His sacrifice saved 4,000 Velkar lives. His memorial service was attended by 7 people. 3 of them were human. The Velkari government sent a standard form letter of condolence with no signature. Ambassador. Park Gina had submitted 847 proposals during her career. Plans for better cooperation. Ideas for shared research. Projects that would benefit everyone equally. Only one proposal had ever passed. And when it succeeded, a Velkari delegate claimed credit for it. Gina said nothing. She simply kept working. The report contained one section that Morath could barely read. It was titled Invitations Extended. Humans had invited council members to Earth 2,847 times over 40 years. They wanted to share their culture. They wanted to show their worlds to their colleagues. They wanted to build real friendships beyond the formal meetings. Every single invitation had been rejected or ignored. Not one council member had ever visited Earth. Not one had attended a human celebration. Not one had eaten a human meal, or listened to human music, or seen a human sunset. When human diplomats invited colleagues to dinner, those colleagues suddenly had other plans. When human scientists offered to collaborate, they were told their work was not important enough. When human soldiers saved alien lives, they received form letters instead of medals. And still, the humans had stayed. Still, they had served. Still, they had hoped. Until the day they stopped hoping. Morath set down the report and walked to his window. The stars looked different now. They looked accusatory. He remembered the day Ambassador Park Gina had given her first speech to the council. She had been young then, barely 30 years old, with bright eyes full of optimism. She had spoken about friendship and cooperation and mutual respect at the end of her speech. She had said something that Morath had dismissed as naive human sentimentality. "We humans have a saying," she had told the chamber. "You never know what you have until it is gone." We hope you never have to learn what that means. The delegates had laughed politely and moved on to other business. Now, 2 years later, Morath finally understood the humans had been the conscience of the council. They had been the ones who remembered that power should serve the weak, not exploit them. They had been the ones who gave without expecting return, who helped without counting cost, who believed in goodness, even when goodness was not returned to them. And the council had treated them like dirt beneath their feet. Morath poured himself another drink. His hands were shaking. He had spent his entire career building power and influence. He had crushed rivals and dominated debates. He had believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. But strength had not kept the trade routes open. Strength had not healed the sick. Strength had not stopped the Crocian raids. Strength had not held the council together. Kindness had done those things. Human kindness. And he had mocked it. The glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Morith did not bother to clean it up. What was the point? Everything was already broken. In the third year after the departure, a single human ship appeared at the edge of council space. It was a small vessel, barely larger than a shuttle. It carried no weapons. Its shields were lowered. It made no aggressive moves. It simply waited at the border, broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies. This is the Human Coalition Vessel Messenger. We request permission to address the council. Chancellor Morith received the news in the middle of the night. He had not slept well in months. His scales had lost their shine. His forehands trembled constantly. The stress of holding together a collapsing government had aged him 20 years. But when he heard about the human ship, he moved faster than he had in decades. Within 6 hours, every council delegate had gathered in the great chamber. They sat in nervous silence, watching the entrance. Some had prepared speeches of apology. Others had rehearsed offers of alliance. A few had brought gifts, hoping to win human favor. The doors opened. A single human walked in. She was young, perhaps 25 years old. Her uniform was simple and clean. Dark blue with no decorations except a small pin shaped like earth. Her black hair was cut short. Her face showed no anger, no resentment, no triumph. Her name was Lim Soo-yoon. She walked to the center of the chamber and stopped. She did not bow as Ambassador Park Gina had always done. But she did not show disrespect either. She simply stood there, calm and composed, waiting for the room to fall silent. When everyone was quiet, she began to speak. "I bring a message from the Human Coalition," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. It reached every corner of the vast chamber. "I am not here to negotiate. I am not here to demand anything. I am here only to deliver this message and then leave." She paused, looking around the room. Her eyes passed over Chancellor Morith without stopping. "Humanity holds no anger toward this body," she continued. "We understand that those who serve quietly are often treated with contempt. We gave freely because giving was enough for us. We asked for nothing because we believed that kindness needed no reward." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "But we have learned something in these 3 years," Soo-yoon said. "We have learned that giving to those who cannot see our worth diminishes us both. We gave you our best, and you laughed at us. We offered you friendship, and you rejected it. We tried to help you see that the galaxy could be a place of cooperation and mutual respect." She shook her head slowly. "You chose to see it as a place of competition and dominance. That was your right. But it is also our right to leave." Chancellor Morith found his voice. "Please," he said. "We understand our mistakes now. We are prepared to offer." "I am not here to listen," Soo-yoon interrupted gently. "I am here to speak. Please let me finish." Morith fell silent. "We are building something new," Soo-yoon continued. "Beyond your borders, there are species who are abandoned by this council. Worlds you considered too poor to help, people you thought were beneath your notice. We went to them. We helped them. And they welcomed us." She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data chip. "The Human Coalition now includes 47 species. We judge each other by actions, not by age or power. We share resources freely. We protect each other equally. We have no junior members or senior members. Everyone has a voice." She placed the chip on a small table in the center of the chamber. This chip contains coordinates to Coalition space. It also contains a complete record of every contribution humanity made during our time in this council. Every life we saved. Every problem we solved. Every insult we endured without complaint. She stepped back from the table. "You are welcome to join us. Not as rulers, but as equals. The same terms you denied us for 40 years, we will not force you. We will not beg you. The choice is yours. A delegate from the Decian Consortium raised a trembling hand. Is this revenge? She asked. Are you trying to humiliate us? So-Yun shook her head. No, this is simply consequence. When you treat kindness with contempt, kindness goes elsewhere. When you mock those who help you, they stop helping. This is not punishment. This is just what happens. She turned to leave, then stopped. There is one more thing, she said. Ambassador Park Gina asked me to deliver a personal message. She pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket. It was real paper, made from trees on Earth. Gina had written on it with her own hand. So-Yun read the message aloud. Did you ever once ask us to stay? The words hung in the air like a weight. Every delegate knew the answer. When the humans had walked out 3 years ago, no one had tried to stop them. No one had asked what was wrong. No one had said, please let us talk about this. They had assumed humans would come crawling back. They had been so certain of their own superiority that they had not even considered the possibility of loss. So-Yun folded the paper and put it away. Bye, she said simply. She walked out of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. The doors closed behind her. For a long time, no one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, Chancellor Moreth rose from his seat. He walked down to the center of the chamber and picked up the data chip. He held it in his trembling hands, staring at it as if it contained all the secrets of the universe. Perhaps it did. The Galactic Council survived it. But it was never the same. Some species made the journey to coalition space and accepted the offered equality. They found what they had been missing. A community built on respect instead of power. Chancellor Moreth never went. He told himself it was because he had responsibilities. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was ashamed. He could not face the humans he had mocked for so many years. 40 years later, on his deathbed, Moreth called for his successor. With his last breaths, he gave one final piece of advice. When someone offers you kindness, he whispered, do not ask what they want in return. Ask what they need, and then give it. His successor asked why this mattered so much. Moreth closed his eyes. Because I spent my life taking kindness for granted, he said. And when it was gone, I realized it was the only thing that ever truly mattered. He died an hour later. Across the galaxy in coalition space, humans continued to do what they had always done. They helped. They built. They gave without counting cost. But now they did it among friends who appreciated them, and on Earth. In a quiet garden, the old Ambassador Park Gina sat in her chair and watched the sunset. She was 90 years old now, retired and peaceful. Sometimes she thought about the council. She wondered if they had learned anything. She hoped they had, but mostly she just enjoyed the sunset. It was beautiful, and she had earned the right to rest.